Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the session.
Thanks everyone. Today we're going to present our journey at Invisalign, how we were able to scale our FinOps practice, build this kind of a decentralized cost ownership, and accelerate it from kind of a walking to jogging. My name is Vitaly Belyasov. I'm a director of FinOps at Invisalign or Align Technology, and I've been doing FinOps for 7 years now, and I've been part of the community since early beginning, organizing meetups, and I'm always happy and excited when there is an opportunity to give back to the community. So let's kick it off.
I'm Emma Patki, and I lead the platform and the product software engineering teams, also the diagnostics business unit at Align Technology.
And with that, Emma, why don't you kick us off what Align Technology is about?
Yep. So we are the makers of Invisalign, the clear aligner system, and we've had the privilege to date to treat and change the smiles of more than 20 million patients worldwide. Our world of digital actually starts with our iTero scanners, where doctors can scan patients intraorally and generate a digital image of their raw anatomy of their mouth. We also make dental CAD software that labs use to design restorations such as crowns and bridges. I want to spend a few minutes on how digital enables our strategic goals. From the time that doctors take a scan using our intraoral scanner to the time that we actually manufacture our physical aligners, our entire experience that we offer to doctors and patients is digital. We can simulate your Invisalign smile on the scanner. Doctors can have a dialogue with the patient on their treatment. When the patient's ready, doctors can submit their scans, photos, x-rays, CBCTs, etc. And we run that against our backbone of machine learning and machine learning models and algorithms to generate what we call ClinCheck, which is our Invisalign digital treatment plan. And doctors can review that on our cloud platform. They can make changes, and then when they're ready, they can accept that plan. And that's really when digital turns to physical, and we manufacture the aligners. Just to give you guys a perspective, we make 1 million unique aligners every day in our manufacturing facilities. So all of the digital workflow that happens in between the time that a scan is submitted to the time that a physical aligner is made is all supported by what we call the Align Digital Platform. And at every step of the way, FinOps has become a key enabler for us as we think about our strategic goals, as we think about adding value proposition and launching new products, as we think about going into new markets, we think about whether we should regionalize our digital services. As we think about driving efficiency in the doctor's clinics, we also think about how we want to integrate, how we want to build APIs, what cloud choices should we make for our SaaS solutions. FinOps literally lends itself to all of the decisions that we make in our digital practice.
Okay, so as I said, today we're going to talk about the journey that we had, but before this, let's just take a step back and take a look at what FinOps V1 was look like at Align Technology. So just a quick overview, we have almost all of them, all the cloud providers. We use it for different use cases. And when I joined the company in 2018, we have some footprint, but as you can see, we were growing year over year, almost doubling every year. And at this stage, we have roughly 30 plus accounts across all the cloud providers and 200 plus products in this cloud. So basically, this is our footprint. And Emma, what was the operational model back in the days?
Yeah, so back in, I'm going to say 2018, 2019, we had mostly technology-centric teams. And what that means is if we have to deliver one feature, I'm just going to take root visualization as a feature. We needed to have 10 teams, the customer portal team, the treatment planning team, sometimes an ERP team if we wanted to charge for that capability. There was almost 10 teams that needed to be talked to, 50 people that needed to be engaged with in order to release one feature or one product. As you can imagine, the go-to-market time for this, it was enormously long. There was a lot of chitter-chatter between the teams, each each team coming with a different skill set, with a different SDLC for their software. And the other thing, the most important thing from a FinOps perspective and a cloud cost perspective is no one felt ownership or accountability over the cost of that feature. If it's going across 4 different teams, 5 different systems, no one feels any kind of accountability. We had shared AWS accounts, so everything was lumped into just a few shared accounts. Very difficult for people to tell what cost was coming from my capabilities and my features, what something else.
I see people are nodding heads, so probably it resonates with some of the audience. Yeah, if you were there, that's a tough. Anyway, so yeah, back in the days, so we still were doing FinOps. As I said, I joined in 2018, and we were focusing heavily on like core FinOps capabilities, like the inform stage, obviously, like all this kind of a chargeback, showback, allocation, attribution, budgeting and forecasting, and we are also heavy on the optimization. There were a lot of low-hanging fruits that's basically keep us visible. And from the kind of involvement perspective, some of the personas were not that involved. Specifically, like engineering and product and leadership were kind of only looking at the cloud cost when like there is a fire. So that was the V1. So basically, this is where we were, and obviously the challenges from the FinOps practitioner standpoint, engineering teams delayed or kind of a deprioritized cost optimization because it was not clear for them whether they should focus on like business feature or working on this optimization. Lack of clearly defined ownership. This was one of the critical problems when even though you know something is inefficient, nobody's actually taking care of this because it's not my problem unless like somebody tell me to do it. It costs a lot of like operational friction for the central FinOps team because you have to chase and convince every kind of engineering team to work on this, make sure they understand why it's important for the company and so on. And yeah, tooling was not a silver bullet, even though you have this allocation and data, it's just not working unless something happening. What was the main challenges from the leadership perspective?
So from the leadership perspective, when we tried to go into our annual operating plan and put together a budget for the next year, most of the time when we asked the engineering teams, they'd apply let's say the company was planning a 20% year-over-year growth, they'd just slap a 20% on top of it without actually understanding what their capabilities, how those would be used. And many times what would happen is, if you're building a particular feature capability that's segmenting teeth, doctors are sending in many more scans than the actual growth of an Invisalign case might be, right? And so we would never be able to predict accurately what budgets would be for each of our cloud features. And people basically, because of that, we typically overran our budgets. Like Vitaly was saying, nobody particularly felt accountability over that. And most of our budget management was largely reactive. So when failures happened, when budget overruns happened, we'd look at it, we'd fix it, we'd hope that the next one wouldn't, but when it did, we just kept going that way. And engineers didn't feel like they were vested in this. They didn't have any kind of performance goals, any kind of KPIs to meet. No incentives, right? And so mostly to the extent that Vitaly and his team could influence the engineering teams, that I could influence the engineering teams, we'd make some progress, but it was definitely not something that was predictable and repeatable.
Okay, and then this happened. That's actually a picture of me and in our kind of a FinOps command center on that day. So yeah, just another spend panic happened 3 years ago. And this is how we decided that we need to change the approach, that we need to do something different in order to prevent this kind of spend panics in the future.
I think the difference between this pivotal movement and some of the other budget overruns that we had was it was massive. It wasn't something that we could absorb in our quarterly budget. I don't even think in our annual for that year. And it got raised up all the way to our CFO and our CIO, right? And sometimes I think you need these pivotal moments where you really ask yourself, we're really not in a place that we can project. But not only that, we're not even in a place where we can actually make up any kind of budget overruns. And for us, that was a really key pivotal moment where we said we had to make some changes.
Yeah, the other difference was that FinOps team was prepared. Like, we knew exactly who was causing this overrun, and we had a plan. So yeah, let's talk about the plan. So we proposed the kind of a vision for how we should change the FinOps practice in order to prevent such kind of a failures happening in the future. So first thing that we realized that we need to kind of build this kind of a operate phase, and this vision had from the previous implementation of the FinOps is that we need to assign a virtual role within every engineering team who would be responsible for all the kind of a cost management. And then we definitely need to engage with leadership, engineering managers to make this happen. And we'll talk more about this during the actual implementation. So yeah, the next part of the vision is that we need to have the kind of a technical capabilities in order to track down on a different kind of a granularity levels, all this kind of a FinOps insight, from budgeting, forecasting, from like component team level to roll it up to like department or like business unit. And everything is a self-service because we cannot scale effectively when it's not self-service. And yeah, optimization, basically we figure out that there's gonna be like centrally managed optimization programs that we're going to have at the company, but they're also going to be continuous kind of a waste removal that engineering teams need to take care of. And this should be like a process that we do not expect to have like additional resources for that. This should be like a continuous process. And yeah, central FinOps team will manage the reservation. So yeah, it's as simple as that. Like, now we have the vision, let's talk about the implementation, because it's the most easiest part, right?
Yeah, so we changed the way we organize ourselves. We also had another challenge happening then, that we weren't able to release features fast enough to market. We had several features in our backlog that would take years to release. We looked at that problem. It's a little bit of what I said, which is 10 teams, 50 people, all working on one feature set, each with their own priorities and their own little challenges. So what we did was we completely flipped and created what we call technology product-centric teams. So we took a person from the customer portal team, a few people from the treatment planning team, some people from the ERP team, the monetization team, and we put them in one technology product-centric team. We gave them a product owner, and we told them, you own the roadmap for this feature or this capability. You decide when things get launched, but you also get a dedicated AWS account, and now you own the product design choices you make, and also the cloud costs that come with this feature. You own projecting out business growth, doctor adoption, that's all yours. I think this change of giving them that ownership, kind of telling them that you build it, you run it, you own it, it's actually quite transformative. People feel ownership in what they're building. They own a multi-year roadmap. It's not like you're getting switched in and switched out, one day on this project, one day on something else. You start building a sense of ownership. You start having meaningful design discussions that you can then roll out in sequence and phases. And that's what happened, as people started to own their own projections, own their own budgets.
Yeah, you build it, you run it, and you pay for it.
And you have the FinOps team, which helps you as an enabling team, as a supporting team.
Yeah, and yeah, the next step would be, so once we have this kind of accountability built in, the way we're kind of delivering the software, like how do we activate all the personas that are not fully engaged with the FinOps processes? And I'm thinking of it like as going to a concert. Every single kind of artist can do like their own thing independently, but in order to play all together, you first need to figure out what you're playing, right? And then somebody needs to kind of orchestrate to make sure we're playing everything at the same time. So sometimes this role, FinOps has to take this role. So make sure nobody's rushing and nobody's dragging. So you have to motivate. But yeah, like for the leadership, what was the key kind of moments that help us to kind of leaders to be more engaged?
We put in a few sort of guardrails and goals for the team, right? So we said your budget projections are going to be formally a part of the annual operating plan. Optimizing forecasting cost is not mandatory anymore, right? So we put it on people's performance goals. I hold monthly operating reviews, not just with the FinOps team, but with our entire engineering and developer experience team. And every month we review metrics. We review metrics like DORA metrics for productivity, Copilot usage. We also review FinOps metrics. Where have you been able to save on optimizations? What have you done over the last month? Where do you think you're headed over the next few months? What are you going to look into? All of these discussions are had in the monthly operating review. It's fascinating what getting people together every month does. They feel the need to showcase improvements, progress. People will, when you let people think through what is possible, the things that the optimizations people come up with in discussion with Vitaly's team, it's amazing, right? But really, I feel allowing them to showcase that and then recognizing the teams, the practitioners, it's been really key for us. And then I think the most important thing is also consistency, right? There's no exceptions. Everyone has to follow, everyone attends the monthly operating review, they show their metrics. I don't think you want to be the only team not showing any improvements. It's really not a choice, right? And so that's also helped kind of set the stage with not just my teams, but also my peers and their teams, right? A lot of this is getting buy-in from my manager, who's the chief digital officer of the company. And so setting that tone, I think, was really important from a leadership buy-in perspective. And sometimes failure is what you need, right? Not every monthly operating review is good news. There are some MORs where they come in and they say, we exceeded the budget. You could borrow from other teams and see what improvements they made. It's a safe space for you, right? And that's something I emphasize a lot of times with my team, right? It is okay for you to have exceeded budget. You need to know why it happened, and you need to know what you're going to do to address that going forward.
And talking about like the engineering persona, so I think of it as an API. Like working with engineers is tough sometimes because like I really like this quote. So tell me how you will measure me, and I will tell you how I will behave. So once you kind of set up a clear boundaries, like a clear expectations and KPIs, they start to behave different because they know what you're expecting, they know what is expected, and they know that they have their control over it. So for us, for this transformation, we started with simple stuff like, well, we first identified the practitioners, and we did because of this kind of organizational change, we now have the people responsible for every single cloud account, so that we know who is owning all the resources in this account. But for the kind of KPIs, we started small with budgets. So unless if you're kind of overspending more than 5% of your budget, then it triggers the budget increase process. So this is where we kind of investigate, why is it happening? Is it because the volume is growing, or it's just because there was some failure, or like the infrastructure was not set up optimally? And then the other kind of a KPI that we are tracking is the dollar amount of waste resources. So again, we started small with identifying non-negotiable waste checks, something like idle databases, stuff like this, easy. But then once you get into this practice, FinOps team just adding new kind of optimization, like waste checks to the scope. And then you have to engage with engineering managers to make sure that understand that this is like a process, not like a one-off activity, and then they have flexibility to prioritize this kind of FinOps activities, but we're looking at the macro trends. Like if the waste trend is going up months over months, something is wrong with the process. But if it's going down, and you can have spikes, it's okay to have spikes, but then you make sure you kind of address it. Yeah, some other personas, yeah, and then help us like central FinOps team from firefighting to kind of a strategic enablement. So right now we are working on like the tooling, on like the processes, not like chasing people with like, hey, this is like your top 3 waste resources. We're still doing this time to time. Finance team is actually really a good partner to help with kind of a activate leadership team, because they know how much of the effect like this budget overruns can cause like company-wide. So they have the data, really encouraging to work with them. Finance team is awesome. Procurement is another great partner for us to kind of make sure we kind of optimizing the value we are getting out of the cloud providers. So yeah, it's also been really helpful. Yeah, and then product teams. So basically, we have more and more conversations around like how this new product feature, what would be the cost implications, and yeah, we'll cover this later today as well.
Can I just add that this transformation was not easy for Vitaly's team, right? It's not easy going from gatekeepers to strategic enablers. I know there was many rough, you'll experience rough discussions with the engineering teams. You need leadership buy-in. You need someone to give you air cover. But I can tell you that when we talked to corporate communications to get us approval to present in this conference, and they're typically not super happy with us sharing everything that we've done. They actually, the finance team mentioned to them all the great work that's been happening in cloud cost savings. And we actually heard it from the corp comms team that, hey, we'd love for you to share what you've done. We heard it from the finance team that you guys have done a really great job. So you can imagine how much the finance team is now our partner and Vitaly's partner in this.
Yeah, new startup idea to have like AI agent for like central FinOps team to do like psychological kind of a support while dealing this kind of a massive transformations. Anyway, so for the optimization, as I mentioned, we're kind of isolated the waste removal as a process, and it's kind of a one thing. But then the central FinOps team identified several like strategic kind of transformations or optimizations that should be done, like replatforming from Windows to Linux, company-wide. And we've been dealing with this as a project, not like as a process. So this was also helpful, and this decreased our cloud kind of spending quite significantly and helped us to scale effectively. And then at the end of the day, we also got a lot of like once we kind of start measuring engineers, many engineering teams just came at us and saying like, hey, we figure out that we are not using this kind of a feature in this region, so we just disable it. And then they started to kind of propose their own optimization kind of ideas that are beyond the infrastructure. It's more like an application level kind of stuff, like do we actually need to run this calculation every time, or we can prioritize? So it's really kind of a deep kind of optimization that was happening. Yeah, and the source for this transformation is our in-house kind of a FinOps platform that we built. We kind of run into several limitations of like cloud native tooling and like vendors that are on the market. And the main kind of a challenge and the problem that we were solving is the so-called like last mile problem. So how do we kind of attribute all the FinOps capability, like insights from all the FinOps capabilities to like multi-level organizational structure that we have at Align. So whether it's going to be budget that we want to have like per component level, but we wanted to roll it up to like department level and see like what's the utilization of the department level budgets, and then we can kind of drill down to see like what the health check of every component. So we use this approach for every kind of a FinOps capabilities, like forecasting, budgeting, optimization, waste removal. And this platform been instrumental for us to kind of go beyond cloud. So the license management and the AI, we kind of are building on top of what we have already. And yeah, that's been really key and essential in our kind of a journey.
Yeah, and I'll say data is key, but the way we mapped it to our organizational structure, I think has been the win for us. Because now it's clear who is responsible for managing the optimization on this particular capability or this particular service. There's no, I don't hear any arguments about it from the team. And I think that transformation, just the data is one thing, but actionable, who's responsible, what do I do with it? very important.
Yeah, the other thing is that sometimes when you have the optimization opportunity, that could be like one single optimization opportunity can save you like $100 per month, and it's like not really making sense for like engineering manager to put some effort into remediating this. But then when you kind of show the bigger picture of like how this kind of rolls up to like the department level and the company-wide level, then it's kind of start making sense. So have this kind of a ability to map it across several kind of levels of granularity, it's been really helpful.
Yeah, so our results, speak for themselves. We've made a 70% reduction in waste. 87% of our teams now don't extend their cloud budget, right? Because they know how to forecast. They have good confidence in how they forecast. Failures are fine. They learn how to correct them. And I think for me, the biggest change has been the accountability of the engineering teams, as well as the product teams, right? Products still coming along, but engineering, this notion that I am making cost-aware engineering decisions, and we'll talk about a few examples where engineering's really thought through what it costs to design and run. But that's been key for me, the accountability from the engineers, them coming to Vitaly and saying that I can optimize this, as against Vitaly going after them, is been a change for us.
So yeah, cost-aware engineering decision. This is something that's been coming more and more, but we have several interesting cases here.
So ClinCheck, as I mentioned, is our treatment planning and visualization platform. It's on AWS, it's fully cloud native. Doctors from all over the world use it to modify their Invisalign treatment plans. It's highly 3D centric. They can move teeth up and down. They can make all kinds of changes. We show them updates in real time, and this is the place where doctors live. So we had just moved from a desktop version of ClinCheck to a cloud version. We were starting to see a steady increase in the cloud traffic. Doctors were starting to retire using the desktop version. And we had this thing called 3D modifications. It's simply moving teeth, intruding a teeth, extruding a tooth, adding some IPR, some proximal reduction between teeth spaces, etc. All of these went to a back-end component on AWS that was just out of budget. It kept continuously exceeding its budgets. We knew what we had to change. We knew we had to change the EBS volumes, but more importantly, we were oversizing it. We couldn't quite predict when doctors would make changes. We sort of planned for probably the peak load in all of this. And the teams had a plan, but we also had a product roadmap to launch. And at that point, I made a call. I said, you know what, we're going to extend this overrun by another quarter because we have to release the product features that this component has promised to the business. And so we went ahead with that. We got the buy-in from finance to keep this going for another quarter. Actually, I think it became 2 at the end of the day. But anyway, we got that, and we were able to not just change the volumes, but more importantly, get the confidence that we could adjust to the number of agents that we needed to run. Lots of research, lots of worry that we're going to miss our SLAs, that performance isn't going to be great. So we took the help of our performance team, we ran through numbers, we looked at production volume, and we did it in a cannery, right? We didn't change all of this overnight. We did it for the Brazil region in the beginning, then with Southeast Asia, and we finally went to the US, which is by far our biggest market. So this is a great example of, looking at the costs, but making a cost over value decision for some time. Another example, so we have something called Smart Debond. A lot of patients come in wearing metal wires and brackets, and they're looking for Invisalign retainers. So when doctors scan them, they scan them with the metal wires and brackets. We have machine learning models that actually simulate what the teeth would look like when the braces are taken off, because doctors don't want to wait, and they want to invite the patient back when their last braces are going to be removed and give them their Invisalign retainer right away. We launched this in the US. It did really, really well. Not so well in China. And so the engineer who was in charge of this actually reached out to the product team. I don't think that's ever happened before, and said that, hey, we seem to have oversized the infrastructure in China. Just wanted to check with you on the business growth volumes. And the product manager actually felt the accountability at that point to say, yeah, I don't think we've had the growth that we anticipated in China for this feature. I'm okay if you want to downsize the infrastructure and we'll watch it. And we'll see if we have to grow. I don't think this would have happened 2 years ago. We would have fought about not changing the infrastructure, worried that suddenly China would wake up and start using the smart debond feature. But it's been all the transformation that we've gone through that allowed the engineer to do this, and super proud of him.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, and I'm kind of really exciting to see how the culture has actually changed in the company. And yeah, I think we're having more and more of these conversations, like shifting the FinOps left in terms of like the kind of making decisions before we're actually launching something. So yeah, it's truly amazing to see. Okay, the last part, basically, I think we kind of in a good shape in terms of like managing the cloud costs, and we changed the mindset for the engineering teams, but we have more problems to address, and that would be licensing and AI. So yeah, let's talk about this for during the next couple slides. Basically, we started with the license management because it's also like a significant kind of a expense that we have, and basically we have similar kind of a spend panic moments with the license management, specifically for like the big kind of a SaaS products that we're using. And what we kind of identified, so we were not planning for the renewal in advance because we were not knowing the inventory, we were not knowing like when the renewal is coming, what are the terms. We didn't know like what is actually the utilization, like how effectively we are utilizing the current license. So kind of is it effective, or we need to kind of downsize it. And then we have a vendor sprawl. Basically, there's so many tools that we use that we need to make sure we kind of understand the full portfolio. So in order to address this, we kind of built our in-house kind of inventory tool. This is Jira-based project, but we have all the data there, and like last year, all the renewals were on time, so we know that the renewal is coming, so we started kind of a negotiation process before, and we were able to prepare ourselves to kind of understand the usage, to understand whether we need to downsize or increase the amount of licenses. So yeah, this internal tool been helpful, and it's kind of started. It's already led to like numerous kind of license optimizations, but this is more interesting. Like when there is a kind of so yeah, Splunk. Everyone loves Splunk, but when there is a kind of a usage-based license, like SaaS licensing, it's hard, especially when you don't know what are the internal units and how do you utilizing them, how you can measure it. So we leverage our in-house platform to allocate the Splunk usage, and we were able to identify like the key contributors and started working with them to understand like what kind of logs they're sending to Splunk, whether we need all these logs or they're just dumping stuff to the Splunk. Yeah, we want to extend it to other like big usage-based SaaS vendors to make sure that everything, like we know what is driving the spend, and we also want to implement the same principles so the engineers are accountable for how they're using any tool.
Yeah, I didn't know before this which team was using Splunk and how much. All I knew that we were going over our ingest volume and getting charged for more compute. This really helps, right? It gives me a chart of who's logging what. Not everyone needs a 90-day retention, right? So really looking at their business process, we could cut down the retention to 60 days. Not everyone needs to log every single thing that's happening. It's been a game changer for us, and just those discussions of what are you logging, how much are you logging, and what is your retention period.
Yeah, and this is exactly what like JR was talking about, the scopes. This is, I think, the natural evolution of like where FinOps is going, and I think it's it's just how you add value to your company with like something that you already have in your company. Anyway, AI cost management. This is the fun. This is where the fun is. Basically, AI is Wild West right now. Maybe not for everyone, but talking to other people, I understand that right now it's like not clearly defined pattern for AI adoption. Basically, it's innovation experimentation phase, right? Everyone trying to build their own agents and trying to figure out if there is a business case for it. And the technology is rapidly evolving, right? Like all these new models releasing every week, like you just need to make sure you kind of understand like what's happening. And yeah, as I said, everyone is doing AI. Like cloud engineering team is building their own kind of AI agents. We have a bunch of like AI initiatives internally and externally. So it's going to be big. So we want to make sure we kind of applying the same principles. And then it's unclear how to prioritize performance and cost trade-offs, and how to identify inefficiency there. So the first thing that we did to address it is yet again leverage the same platform, able to kind of allocate all the AI agentic kind of usage to teams that we already like to our organizational structures. So we know who's doing what, we know who is spending, and what are the macro trends looks like. Are we like increasing amount of like investment in AI or decreasing? So this is the first step, and the next step for us would be to enhance it with like usage data through the CloudWatch or just to pull the data from like how many tokens we are like using for every use case. Are there any outliers? And again, we'll just kind of add this to our FinOps platform, and we'll kind of have the full visibility. The next kind of a topic that we are discussing actively is how do we select a model? Because it's obvious that you don't need the latest and greatest models for every use case that you have, but how do you actually select a model, and how do you justify, and how do you measure the cost, right? And this is a real life example. It's like this is a list prices that you can get, and this is just comparing two different models. Like for like pretty simple AI agent use case, this would how much one agent costs you, and the cost difference would not be that significant, right? Like so $4,000 per year. It's basically nothing on a company-wide, but as you scale, as there's more and more agents, you're gonna see this difference, and this is why it's important to kind of make sure we understand how we're selecting the models from the day zero. And this is something that we haven't solved yet, but this is what we wanna work on this year.
Yeah, and I think tying it back to some of the more like strategic decisions, I plan to use this even to determine if there is a use case that has an investment, that has an ROI to it, right? Everyone's coming up with so many use cases for both product and non-product, and part of this will be what is it going to cost for us to build and then scale, and is it worth the investment?
Okay, and the very last thing is we prototyping using some vibe coding, of course, addition to our kind of a FinOps platform. So the first two features would be like the pricing calculator, so that you can estimate how much for your particular use case, how much the model will, like how much you're gonna pay for this, considering all the like discounts that we have company-wide, and then we have like you can play around with different models, understand like what are the cost implications. Like there's gonna be like a recommendation, like if you use this model instead of this one, this will save you that amount of money annually. So working on this one, pretty excited. I think it's gonna be like really helpful from like during the designing phase, so that you can see the actual cost implication, like the annual projections, cost breakdowns, and then you can visualize how much money, and then you can select a different model, see how much it's gonna cost, and then you can compare this across models, and then make a like informed decision. I think it's gonna be really useful for us. And then there's another feature that we are also working on. So yeah, this is how you can compare the costs across different models. We are planning to implement, later on, we're planning to implement some kind of optimization recommendations, considering we're gonna have like a full visibility and like how we using these models. We can recommend like team A have like a similar use case, but spending less. This is actually what it's gonna look like. So we're gonna have like different departments, and then you can have like efficiency rate, right? So you're like for marketing, this rate is poor because it's not cost effective, and here are some kind of optimization steps you can take in order to be more efficient in your AI journey. So yeah, I'm super excited about this one. I think it's gonna be, I think as we scale, it's just gonna be add more and more value to our kind of decision making. So yeah, this is where we are right now for the AI and license management, and that's pretty much it. Thanks everyone.
Yeah.
In one of your slides, I noticed that you guys had FinOps practitioner in all the product teams. Is that a dedicated practitioner, or is it assigning like, hey, you're going to be the practitioner that kind of provides the feedback into your group, Vitaly?
You want to take this one?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's definitely not like embedded practitioner. It's not like a full-time job. It's more like a virtual role that is, normally it's either engineer, like software engineer, or like DevOps type of person, or like engineering managers. So yeah, we are not at the scale where we have like a dedicated full-time practitioners for every engineering team.
I see 3 hands with 3 minutes, so keep it classy, folks.
We're also on that journey to try to assign the costs out to teams. We're kind of stuck on some of our business units with their tagging and labeling strategies not really being that great. Did you run into that at all, or did you have all of your stuff tagged so you could assign it properly?
Yeah, so tagging was also an issue for us, but as Emma mentioned, one of the first steps that we took was to kind of we moved from like a single shared accounts to a set of dedicated accounts. This was actually really helpful. So every team has now set of their own accounts, like dev, stage, and prod for every component, almost every component, so that we know who owns it, and there's no like finger pointing, like, oh, that's not my.
Yeah. That's worked really well for us.
Tagging, like I think when we had tagging, we have like a pretty good coverage, but it still was not that obvious, like who owns this.
Hi, I see a lot of FinOps teams also struggling to get engineers to take action. And I think one of the things that you said that stuck out to me is you made a safe space for these monthly operating reviews, even when the news wasn't good. And I think some of these engineers kind of see FinOps as a bit of a bully. So can you speak more to how you made that space safe and effective for the engineers, even when it was not the best news to give that day?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I look at failure as an opportunity. Every failure is an opportunity. We try to stress, in general, in a line that failure is completely okay. And there's mixed feedback to that, right? Some people say, yeah, you say that, but you don't always act that way. We try. I think this is exactly why we have the MORs, because we let people talk about why something went wrong. The thing is, what they'll usually always come back with a plan though, right? So if you know something went wrong, but you typically have already figured out how you're going to fix it. When the rest of the team sees that there's a safe space for you to come talk about your failures, talk about how you're going to address them, I think it's a little infectious, if I may. And people, we've had enough failures that people have realized that it's a safe space to fail and to get better. Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing. Honestly, it's a culture thing, right? And you won't always you talk to someone in my team, they may not tell you that, right? There may be someday when I've gone after them hard because it happened the second time or the third time or more, and but we try to be cognizant of the fact that failure is really an opportunity.
Got one left, and then I'll get you all to lunch.
Thank you for the great presentation. My question is, how did you get the buy-in from the engineering managers? Who gave you the power to come to the engineering manager and tell them, okay, now the FinOps is part of your concern? Because you need to do the optimization, you need to have this monthly review. We are currently struggling with a similar situation, and in our case, the FinOps are responsible for having the optimization review. So how did you shift it left? Who gave you the power? How did you get the buy-in?
I don't know, you start and then.
You start.
Okay, that's a really good question. So some of it is org changes, I'll be honest. I not only own product engineer, I own FinOps and I own product software engineering, right? So it's a lot easier for me to put that mandate down. But then there are other teams that are not in my organization that I think seeing our success have absolutely no pushback when FinOps reaches them and they work with them. I think having the overall support, though, of my boss, who I mentioned is our chief digital officer, is absolutely key, right? So I don't think it's possible to do this type of transformation if you don't have sort of, in general, your leadership level buy-in. It's a really drag. It's a drag to have the FinOps team go to every engineering person. And so yes, there needs to be some buy-in or some kind of an organizational structure that lends itself to that happening. And I think once you get, what we've seen is once there's been initial success, a lot of people get on the train. And these are people that are not in my organization that just see the value of what we're doing. We've had people from the enterprise engineering, which is kind of our SAP and all of that, come to Vitaly and say, I want to set up the exact same thing that you did. Can I pull the Azure cost usage data into your platform? And can I start working with the enterprise team on that, right? But that didn't happen until we were able to demonstrate the success and have my boss talk about it.
Yeah. And
yes, and you probably want to try on the team that's the early adopter team, right? That's the most willing, and you will always find an early adopter, even forget the org changes and all of that. There's always early adopters. You show success, you that get the early majority, and you'll reach an inflection point.
yeah, and just to kind of add on top of this, it didn't happen overnight. This kind of alignment, like it was basically we were building FinOps like grounds up, and it takes time to get everyone on board. And like you have to be consistent. You have to have you already have the data. You just need to document, and like when there is another fail that is happening, you have all the answers and you know how to solve it. So this is how you can demonstrate and get everyone on board. Like, do we want to like spend do we want to next year spend another like $5 million on the cloud waste, or do we want to fix that?
And we still have a long ways to go, right? We're not by any means perfect, but yeah, we're getting there.
But you're smiling while you go there. A massive round of applause, please, for Emma and Vitaly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. For more FinOps X 2025 content, go check out our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and leave comments and questions for all of our wonderful speakers. We appreciate your support.